Hey all, welcome to Parker's Reefs. On this episode, we're going to do a 20-month review of my Dream Reef Tank. Alright guys, thank you for joining me on another episode of Parker's Reefs, and yes, it's time. I'm standing in front of my Dream Reef Tank here to give another update and review of where it is, this time at the 20-month milestone. And I have to admit, the excuse of being a fairly new tank and finding its way and getting some stabilization is probably wearing pretty thin now, because realistically, once you get past that year and a half mark, your tank really should have found its groove. And I would like to think that this tank has found its groove now and is really chugging along. And I think that will be representative in the updates I have, or the number of changes I've done to this system, which, spoiler alert, are pretty minimal. I'm at the stage now with this Dream Reef Tank that I'm not chopping and changing things every other week or month, because things are working pretty well, and the best thing I can do right now is try to let it do its thing, which does make for a slightly awkward update, but don't fear, I've got a couple of minor changes that I can go through with you, and of course, I'll give you some really close, great updates on each of these corals and how they're going, as well as some of the fish, so let's jump on into it now. Alright, now I did touch on that I haven't had a huge number of changes to this system, but there has been a couple of minor things that I've changed. I have added one new fish, one new invert, and you may see from the rack up there I have been doing some fragging. I am keen to add some more corals pretty soon. In fact, over the last month, maybe I've added one hammer, which I'll give you a little close-up of in a second, a beautiful yellow hammer I picked up from Deer Park Aquarium. But all in all, the changes have been pretty basic. Now, the first thing I'll touch on is the invert, which is conveniently hiding up behind the Tunzi Wavemaker up there at the moment, is a Biscuit Starfish. Now, I have been a long-term believer, I'm not sure where I heard the information, but I was always under the impression that these were only suited to cold water marine tanks. So when my local fish shop got some in, and they said that they were well suited to 25°C reef tanks, and that they will live a long and healthy life at those temperatures, I snapped one up. And I have to admit, my daughter has been a huge fan of the starfish that we've affectionately named Cookie for obvious reasons, particularly when he does laps up and down the tank. He's been a really cool little addition. Super bright, pretty active, and I'm not sure he does anything super beneficial to the tank, but it's definitely a fan favorite of all the younger reef keepers that come and visit our house. Alright, moving on to fish now, and I have to admit I have not had the appetite for adding new fish to this system. After that big hit where I lost my whitetail coal, my orange shoulder tang, and my copper band butterfly, I've kind of got a little bit of cold feet about it all, but I have moved one fish over from my frag tank that's been in there for about 6 months into the display tank, and I'll see if he wants to come out now. He is an Australian Stripey, which for those of you who don't know, have an incredible reputation for being aptasia smashers. Now, I did have an aptasia outbreak in my frag tank, so I picked him up to put in there with this sort of backup plan of thinking, if I do not get hold of the aptasia in this display tank, I'll be able to assess to see how he goes with the corals in that frag tank, and if he does mostly leave those alone, he'll be safe to put into my display tank. Now, since picking up that Australian Stripey for my frag tank, I have tried 2 other fish in this system here to try and naturally control the aptasia. The first being that copper band butterfly that unfortunately created that bad sequence of events. I then tried a filefish in here, which we named Gary, and I have to admit he's been a pretty cool addition to the system, although has not touched an aptasia as far as I've seen once the whole time he's been in there. I did have a look at my frag tank and see that my Australian Stripey in there had done an incredible job at wiping out every aptasia in there without touching any of the hammers or SPS in that system, which got me super excited, so I figured I'd move him across here, and we've got Barry here. He's conveniently came out right on cue. We've called him Barry for Great Barrier Reef. He's an Australian Stripey. I have to say he's been in here for about 2 or 3 weeks now, and I've yet to see him personally with my own eyes actually eat an aptasia, but same thing goes in my frag tank. I never actually physically saw him eat one in there, but after about 3 or 4 weeks, I went from having maybe 100 to 200 that I could see down to none. So I'm going to say that it was him in that system that cleaned them out, and I'm hoping that given some time he will do the same thing in my display tank. I can say, touch wood, that I have not seen him touch any corals yet, or if he has, definitely no more than what my hybrid angel is already doing. So far he's been a pretty good roll of the dice, but once I see him eating the aptasia, I'm also hopeful that he'll teach the filefish that they're a tasty little treat. Hopefully that'll tide him over and he won't need to touch any corals at all. Alright, next up is the coral in this system, and whilst I haven't added a heap of coral to the tank, apart from maybe one very nice yellow hammer that I picked up from Deer Park Aquarium, which I'll show you on screen now. The one thing I have been doing with the coral in this system over the last month or two is actually started doing some fragging. You can see my Frag Rack up there, which is a brand new one from Flipper, which I'll probably do a review on it at some point in time because it's a pretty nifty little setup. Even though it's not rated for anything near 19mm glass, you can see it up there doing a fine job holding a full tray of frags in there. Now the reason why I wanted to put those frags in this tank rather than in my frag tank is because I'm a big believer of when you cut a coral, you kind of stress it a little bit and it needs the best environment possible to heal. Now, if that coral's been growing in your display tank, taking it out of there when it's stressed, put into another tank with different lighting, different flow and different tank mates, as well as different conditions, just seems like a bad move for me. So I personally like to keep at least my very expensive frags in the display tank while they heal. Once they've healed, I can then move them into another tank. But until I see that encrusting, I do like to keep particularly those expensive ones in the display tank just so that they have the best chance of survival. And I must say, looking at the little bits of coralline growing on the tiles as well as the starting of a bit of encrusting, each of them showing a bit of growth coming over the glue and putty on there, which once they get onto the tile and we get a good few millimeters of growth and encrusting on that tile, I'll be happy to move those onto their new homes. Now you may ask yourself, why have I cut some frags from this tank? Because I must admit I was never overly keen on fragging too many of my precious corals, particularly while they weren't breaching the water surface. But there is actually a few reasons why I've gone about it. First and foremost, I am a bit of a believer of the more you trim and frag your corals, within reason at least, the faster they grow. They do seem to heal and grow back quite quickly once you cut them. So hopefully once they get to a decent size and they can weather the hit of a frag, doing those little trims or prunes at that point in time will actually make them grow even quicker. I guess we'll wait and see if that is the case or not, but I can say that my Space Invaders Pectinia, which has been a pretty slow grower despite the fact it's now about an adult's fist size, did only come in about the size of a fingernail. It had sort of plateaued a little bit in its growth, and once I cut 3 or 4 frags off it, the speed at which the flesh healed over those cuts was kind of mind-blowing. So I'm hopeful that it will actually make it spur on and grow a bit quicker, because I have to say, taking that Space Invader Pectinia out of its sort of dark little hole down there, I say dark, it's probably still getting about 300 par in this tank, but moving it up closer to the light and seeing the bright greens and yellows on it was absolutely mind-blowing. So that's reason one. I am hopeful it'll actually make the corals grow a little bit quicker. Reason two is just some of these corals will be moved on for sale, and never hurts to have a little bit of income for this hobby. As we all know, it's pretty expensive. So if I can pull a little bit of side cash from selling some frags in, it'll help me buy some new corals, new fish, new equipment, just keep things spurring along without breaking open the piggy bank too much. And last but not least, I have had a few people ask specifically for some specific frags, so I couldn't help but oblige and cut those frags for them. And once these pieces encrust, I'll be able to move them onto their new homes. In fact, you can already see where the flesh is growing over the glue and putty, so that's a great sign. I'll show you on screen now. Once they've encrusted all the way down onto the tile and have got a good solid base there, they'll be right to move on, and then I can get the frag rack out of the display tank. Now the coral story does not start and begin with the frags that I've been cutting in this system, because obviously if you're cutting frags, your corals are growing it fairly quickly, and the angle you're looking at the tank from right now doesn't really show that all that well. So I will get some top-down footage for you so you can have a look at just how these colonies are growing out from that I was going to say bird's eye perspective, but probably more so a fish eye perspective, and some of them are absolutely blowing my mind. Obviously the Walt Disney is growing quite quickly. It's still only what I'd call a mini colony, but hopefully with those fragging attempts, that will help spur it on a little bit more. The purple Cadbury that I got from John Sim is growing really well despite being in much lower light than my other SPS. The blue stag and some of these blue and green torts are growing really, really fast. Obviously my blue digi is growing fast to the point where I'm just kind of snapping bits off and chucking away because it is kind of shattering over some of the other corals. Some of these beautiful pieces around the side are doing really well. My torches are all still doing fantastic since that bacterial edition, which I know a lot of people are asking about. I can't share it with you yet, but if you do some searching online for bacterial approaches for torches, you may find your answer there. there. My basic SBS is up the back there doing great. My 5 shades of blue, that's the one I named, is absolutely growing in a really strange formation, real tight growth pattern, which I don't know, it's quite interesting because it's probably in the lowest flow of the tank, and I normally associate tight growth with high flow, so that's a bit interesting. My candy cane, the bright candy cane is doing great. My cherry tree Montipora is doing great. Some of my other no-name SBS pieces are absolutely massive now, and I'm showing great coloration. My hammer garden, probably my pride and joy at the moment, is just looking fantastic. Normally I have one hammer a day that is sulking a little bit, but every now and then I get lucky and they're all out and loving life like they are today. Interestingly, my clowns have seemingly settled down here. You can almost always see my female. She's hovering around that reverse with sort of goldy tips. She's often down there, and it's funny because my clowns used to always settle up in this top corner, but over the last couple of months they have moved down here. At least she has. The male, which is just up here, he's normally kicking about, sussing things out. In fact, these guys all think they're getting fed, but my female has been hovering down there. So that's cool to see, because I guess normally the kids really want to see the clowns, and it's kind of awkward when they're right up here. Unless I've got some 7-foot tall kids coming over, it's much easier if they're at eye level of the little ones there. So that's always cool. What I am really loving in the system, one of the corals I added in the last update, is this big branching pink Montipora, which when it came in on unboxing night, I was super keen to grab a piece of that, and I did cut it in half because it was a big monster piece from Oz Fish and Coral, and I got to say, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's held its color, if not intensified, and I'm really starting to see it encrust and grow, which is cool to see. All my other pieces up there doing really good. Great polyp extension, lots of color, looking great. The Space Invaders Pectinia I touched on is also doing really well. My Chalice over here, some of them did get blown around and got stung by either the Goniopora or the frog spawns, but they're still doing fine. Over in the back corner over here, my big red Monty caps just getting bigger and bigger by the day, and it's just looking a treat. Really perfectly positioned in the tank, in my opinion, keeping it nice and low so it's not shadowing too much under there. And the fruity pebbles above it is encrusting very, very quickly indeed. And of course there is that brand new hammer I touched on, as well as some other SPS that I've just sort of stuck on the back of the scape to make sure that fills that space in. It's looking really, really good. But all in all, I guess the blue acros in my tank, or the blue SPS I should say, are probably looking the best, and that's probably a good thing because I've got no shortage of blue SPS in here, so happy days. And I think that pretty well sums up my coral. I did go through the tank recently and just pull out a heap of dead snail shells, which did sort of come about from either the just the early days of the tank when probably I had too many snails in and maybe starved a few out. Combine that with the iodine spike, which I'm sure would not have been great on inverts. Plus the last option there really is that my fish will pick some off, and also inverts don't live forever. So with the number of snails I run in this system, I do end up with a number of snail shells, and they were kind of cluttering the bottom of the tank a little bit. So I did get my tongs out the other day and I pulled probably 100 snail shells out, which I could probably still pull another 100 snail shells out, but it has tidied up the base of this tank a little bit more. I do need to go through and find permanent homes for some of the corals on the base here, just to kind of free up the sand bed, because I do think when you've got a nice clean flowing sand bed, it really makes the corals on the rocks pop a bit more. But you know what it's like, you keep seeing corals at places and you want to add them in, and sometimes the easiest spot to put them is down on the sand bed. So it's kind of the conundrum we live in, but I guess there were worse problems to have. All right, moving on to equipment. I have to say this is probably the first time I've done a Dream Reef Tank update, and I don't have a fancy new bit of reef equipment to share with you, but all in all, things have been pretty steady on the reef tank. I did add the Salinity Guardian from Reef Factory, but it isn't really controlling anything. It's more just a monitor and a peace of mind because of the pretty extreme conditions that I run this tank under, with the skimmer plumb to the drain, the RO on a continuous supply, the automatic water change with extra salty water, and then Kalkwasser on tap as well. There are a lot of failure points there, so the Reef Factory Salinity Guardian is just keeping my, I guess, keeping my heart rate normal so I don't have to panic over one of those little automations going wrong and bombing this tank. Everything else has remained absolutely consistent. You probably can see at the end there, I am testing out the brand new Kamoa KH Carer. That is the first unit in the country here, and it does still have some teething issues that I'm working through with Kamoa. Once we get on top of that and the device is ready for production release, I'll give you a review on it then and we can see how things are traveling. But so far the unit, it looks incredible. It's got a couple of little software things we're just sorting out, and then I can give you my full thoughts on the device. But stay tuned for that video. Other than that, I am continuing on with the Reef Moonshiners program, and I'll do a latest update on that soon. I will do a Triton ICP test and run you through the entire process, start to finish, on how you implement Reef Moonshiner methodology. Not necessarily their products. If you want to use other products, totally fine, but at least the Reef Moonshiner methodology. I'll do a video on that coming up very soon. But other than that, everything's just ticking along. My Mastertronic's been an absolute dream. I recently did some maintenance on that just to make sure that it is as accurate as it possibly can be. Having the Mastertronic and the Spin Touch, the two devices that I rely on for most of my testing, giving me comparable results each time I do them or each time it does them, is absolutely fantastic. KH Guardian has been absolutely rock solid. All of my other electronics have been absolutely perfect. So again, touch wood. It's always good when you've got a heap of automations and things aren't giving you grief, because sadly, that's normally a bit of a rarity. Alright guys, there you have it. That is the fairly uneventful 20-month update on the Dream Reef Tank. And I guess in reefing, the saying kind of goes, no news is good news, because news normally means something bad, or it means you've spent a heap of money on something new for the tank. So the last couple of months of me have been fairly cost neutral and thankfully fairly trouble neutral, which is always a good thing. We'll see what the next couple of months bring forward though, because we are nearing the 2-year mark, and I have been squirreling my pennies away just to see, and I must admit I don't have any plans, but I have just been putting a rainy day fund away just in case that coral or fish or equipment that I've been eyeing off comes up and is available. It'll be something that I will be able to reach into that money bank for. But you can rest assured, if there are any further updates or any big changes in this Dream Reef Tank, that if you're subscribed and have that bell notification on, you will see it here first. But in the meantime, if there are any questions, comments or feedback or anything else you'd love to see in this Dream Reef Tank, don't be shy at all. Pop it in the comment section below, because it's something that I live by. I swear that I will personally reply to each and every comment that goes down there. It is the least of the effort that I can do for you guys who watch these videos and help make this channel a possibility. So by all means, put your questions, comments and feedback down in there. And last but not least, a huge shout out to all of my channel members who do chip in a couple of bucks a month just to make this channel a viable and possible thing. So thank you very much for all of the support from you guys. It goes a long, long way to ensuring that I can get in front of the camera and get out on the road, which I will be doing in the next few weeks to bring you guys all the latest videos. I will just touch on that this weekend I will be heading up to Reef Stock Australia, where I plan on grabbing a heap of footage for you guys, not just of the event itself, but all of the new equipment and some of those juicy corals that we will find there. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on all of those updates there. I'm really excited to getting back out there into some reefing events. As you may or may not know, I do plan Underwater Pet Expo, which is based in Melbourne. We are running that later this year, so getting a little sneak peek at how Reef Stock go about their event in this post-COVID world is going to be absolutely worth its weight in gold for me. So I'm really keen to get there, and I'm also keen to see some of my subscribers from Sydney. It'll be fantastic to meet some of you guys in person, so I will see you all there. Other than that, guys, I should probably wrap this video up. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for all of you out there who have followed the journey of this Dream Reef Tank all the way along on this channel, because it has been something of a bit of a labor of love in sharing my ups and downs with you as we go through this process. As you do know, if you watched all of the videos, I've poured a heap of money, a heap of time and a heck of a lot of effort into this tank. So being able to share my excitement with you guys there watching at home really means a lot to me. So thank you all so much for watching. Other than that, guys, till next time, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, keep reefing. Bye.